You know those parents who say, my child is so picky, they won't even eat green peppers. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. My child has subsisted exclusively on goldfish for the last 5 weeks. I started to make dinner and it got me reflecting on what it's been like having a child who's a picky eater. It can be difficult to go places, it can be difficult when you're at home. So I wanted to make this video because I wanted to share some straight talk parent to parent about what it's like to have a picky eater, what are some of the things that we did that helped, and I wanted to be really honest and straightforward about things that didn't help, because the internet has a lot of advice out there. But I'm going to tell you what worked for my child as I make dinner, because last night we were eating dinner and I had made some soup, and it was potato, kale, sausage, and not only did my son eat it, he said, this is good. And I couldn't believe how far we had come over the last few years. So I thought, there are a lot of parents out there who are probably struggling with a child who's a picky eater, and I wanted to offer up some encouragement and some really practical, straightforward tips on things that worked for us. I'm not gonna say that it's always easy or that mealtime always goes perfectly, because it still doesn't, but it's gotten much better. Before I begin, I just need to let you know I am not an occupational therapist. I am not a food therapist, I'm not a doctor. So if you have legitimate concerns about your child's nutrition, definitely talk to your doctor about that. But I hope that what I can offer is my experience as a mom, so that we can all help each other out. And if you have ideas that worked for you, definitely leave them in the comments, because I'm still always looking for advice on how to get my kids to eat more healthful foods, and I'm sure other parents would love to hear from you as well. I'm gonna make dinner while I do this, so just bear with me. You'll know from my forthcoming video that I don't make dinner at dinner time. If you want to see my other tips on how we make it work as a big family, don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned for that video, because I'm going to be making that video shortly. To give you a little background, when I was growing up, I ate every kind of food that was put in front of me. I was the world's least picky eater. I would eat ethnic food, I ate pig's feet, I ate raw oysters. I basically ate whatever the adults asked me to eat, and I ate in large quantities. I was an enthusiastic eater. I still am. I'm still not picky. I still have a big appetite. And really, my lack of experience with being a picky eater, I think, set me back initially, because I was puzzled as to why it was so hard to get my kids to eat. My son came along, and he was just not that interested in many kinds of foods. He only wanted to eat goldfish, muffins, and a few types of fruit. I'll take the fruit, but he wasn't interested in proteins, things that I thought he would like chicken. He didn't want to eat. It was very hard to get him to try anything new, and it was frustrating. So I'll tell you what we tried with him that didn't work. What didn't work was making him skip dessert and go to bed hungry if he didn't eat his dinner. He just did not care. He would just go to bed hungry, and then he wouldn't get the nourishment he needed because he wouldn't really eat much dinner. Another thing that we tried that just really didn't work was trying to sneak foods into other meals. So I remember thinking, well, he likes milkshakes, so maybe I can sneak some kale and some strawberries into a smoothie. And I gave it to him, and he immediately knew something was up, and he said, what's in this? And he refused to take even a single sip. And what I learned was that if he didn't trust the food that I was giving him, if he suspected at all that I was trying to get him to eat something he didn't want, he wouldn't even try it. So I realized that trust had to be a big part of encouraging him to eat, that really he had to be the one motivated to eat the food. Another thing that we tried to do was to try foods that were recommended online by people who said, your children will love these healthy snacks, or your children will love these healthy meals, or even a picky eater will eat these meals. He didn't really like any of those things. If your child's really picky, even common kid foods they may not like. This became a problem when we would go places with a kids menu or to parties where kid food was supplied, because the common kid foods that are supposed to be something everyone likes, like pizza, macaroni and cheese, chicken nuggets, he didn't like any of those things. He literally could not order from a kid's menu. And so I would have to bring food with us, or else he wouldn't eat anything. He would hold out if he didn't like the food. It felt like a lot of work to have to separately pack a meal every time we went somewhere, but it got us through, and I'm not sure if I had to do it again that I would do it any differently, because you all know how hard it can be to be out at an event where you have a child who is crying because he's so hungry. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 12 tips. These are just raw, practical pieces of advice for how to help your child become a less picky eater. And the first thing that I want to say, and this is advice for the adults, is that so much of how this goes depends on the patience and the attitude of the parents. I know it's so frustrating when you have a kid who doesn't want to eat. And when you have kids, which I'm sure you do if you're here watching this, you will know after being a parent for approximately 12 hours that they eat constantly. Someone is always hungry and someone is always eating. So your life as a parent probably consists primarily of planning a meal, shopping for a meal, prepping a meal, serving a meal, or cleaning up from a meal. So because food is such a big part of our existence at this stage of life, it can be really frustrating and can even make us angry if we're constantly battling with a little person or even a big person who just doesn't really want to eat the food that we've made, especially if we've put effort into it. It can be hurtful. So it's important to make sure that you have patience and a good attitude, and that you're respectful of the fact that this child might actually be upset about eating, and there could be some other things going on. Tip number 2 is that you might need to try different flavors. Think outside the box. Perhaps introduce ethnic foods that you're not thinking of. When my son was little, I would give him kind of the plain basic foods that we generally give kids in our culture, where I would try to give him chicken or pasta, and he didn't want it. And it turns out, as he got older and we tried different kinds of foods with him, it turns out that he really likes Asian food. So he loved Japanese vegetables cooked in teriyaki sauce. He likes Chinese, Vietnamese. These are all flavors that I didn't think to give to him as a 2-year-old, but those are his favorites. And I tried replicating the teriyaki vegetables from the Japanese restaurant because he loves the zucchini. And he told me it doesn't taste like the other zucchini. But I'm just so thrilled that he'll eat zucchini. My point is this, that you have to get experimental, and your child's desire for new flavors might be more than what we are feeding them right now. So keep trying new foods, new flavors, different seasonings. You never know what they're really craving. Tip number 3 is have an achievable standard for what it means to try a new food. My son will sniff a food, touch a food, even lick a food before he's willing to really taste it. And for us, we just say, take one bite and see if you like it. And sometimes he does, and sometimes he doesn't. But after he tries that one bite, we always say thank you. We always say, thank you for trying it. We're glad you tried it. And then that gives him a sense of accomplishment, where even if he genuinely doesn't like the new food, he can still feel proud that he tried something new. Tip number 4 is to understand that your child's food dislikes may not be driven by taste. There may be more sensory needs. So my son, when he was little, did not like feeling wet, and so foods that felt wet really rubbed him the wrong way. So texture seemed to almost be more important to him than the taste of the food. And if you feel that there are greater sensory needs with your child, maybe you need to go see your doctor and talk about specific needs that might extend beyond food and maybe more about their sensory needs. Tip number 5, be honest with your kids. Don't try to trick them into eating things they don't want to eat. Don't try to sneak foods they dislike into their favorite foods, because then that might make them inclined to turn down even their favorite foods. You want to establish trust with your kids. You want food to be a good experience, and so you don't want there to be anything that makes them suspicious of you when it's mealtime. Tip number 6, something that worked for us, was making mealtime interesting by offering the kids simple choices. This could mean giving them hummus to dip carrots or cucumbers in. It could mean making tacos where you get to pick what goes in the taco. I found that if they thought that dinner time was fun, it became a much more pleasant experience than if I just handed them the plate and said, this is what was for dinner. Tip number 7, have a trusted adult help you with mealtime. This could be sometime when your mom or your father-in-law or your brother or your sister are babysitting. Maybe it's a favorite uncle or a friend or a neighbor who they really like. Have them prepare and serve food with your child, because sometimes someone who's not mom or dad will encourage kids to try new things that they may not want to do just for mom or dad. And I'll give you an example. One time my mother-in-law was here and she had given the kids these wraps that had, I think it was hummus with carrots and lettuce or maybe cabbage, and they ate them and really liked them, and then they kept asking for them because their grandmother had introduced them to that concept. If I had given them that to eat, I know they would have turned it down. But because someone else who they think is cool, who's not mom, introduced them to that food, then they were willing to try it and realized that they actually liked it. Tip number 8 is to have 3 categories of food at a meal. You're going to want to plate the food such that they can see what's on the plate. So have a few different piles of food on the plate. Don't mix everything together. You should have a couple foods that you know they like, even if it's grapes and grapes and grapes again. Keep giving them the healthy stuff that they like. Give them a couple foods you know that they will eat, and then give them one food that's a maybe, and then another food that's a stretch. So 1 or 2 stretch foods per meal. They don't necessarily have to eat all the food that they like, but encourage them to eat some of it. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll say, just eat 2 more carrots, or eat 2 more bites of that pasta, or eat 3 more bites of chicken. And that way they'll feel like they can accomplish that without it being overwhelming. You don't want mealtime to become stressful for them or for the rest of the family. Tip number 9, set the example. Show them that it's fun to eat a wide range of foods, eat healthful foods. Show them your meal, sit down with them so that they can see what's on your plate. So if you're having lean protein and vegetables, they're gonna start to pick up, oh, this is what people eat, this is what grown-ups eat. They're going to want to be like you as they get older. And even if they're digging in their heels now, they will adapt some of your attitudes and some of your habits because they live with you and they see what you're eating. So it's really important to set the example by eating healthful foods yourself. Tip number 10, forget kid utensils, kid forks. My kids did not want to use these. They're harder to use than the grown-up version, and it made them feel like they were getting some kind of a cheap version of a meal rather than a real meal. They want to be like you. And so I'll show you what we use here. These are from Crate and Barrel. These are for appetizers, but they are just a small version of a regular fork and a regular spoon. And the kids love these because they're cute and small, and yet they look just like what mom and dad are eating off of. So I recommend using just a small or lightweight version of utensils where they can actually really stab the food with their fork, and then it won't be frustrating to use these little dull children's forks where you can't really get a hold of the food. Tip number 11, have a routine. If you start a meal with grace or a blessing. If you end the meal by asking to be excused and clearing your plate, make sure you stick with that routine, because the food that's being served may seem like an unknown, so the routine shouldn't be. Tip number 12, avoid making food a negative experience. Keep it positive. I have friends who remember being yelled at if they didn't eat their dinner, or who were made to eat every morsel of food on their plate, and their memory of mealtime was that it was a very negative, stressful experience. So I definitely recommend trying to keep things positive. Encourage your kids, like I said, to have 2 more bites, 1 more bite, 3 more bites, whatever you think is achievable, so that they can get the nourishment they need without making it a really negative experience. You want mealtime to be peaceful. You want to be able to enjoy family dinners. Remember to keep the long-term goal in mind. Keep food positive, keep mealtime positive. You may not see progress day by day or even week by week, but over the span of years, you will probably see a difference. I hope this has been helpful for you today. I hope that you feel a little more encouraged in helping your kids to be good eaters. And if you have advice or comments or questions, please leave them in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and take care.